navigating yet another school year during a pandemic. This makes school year number 3, if you can believe it. I have 3 guests who are knee-deep in this situation, 3 teachers and the president of the Tennessee Education Association joining me. And of course, this is OpenLine. We would love to hear from you. If you're a teacher or a parent, staff member, go ahead and give us a call. Tell us your thoughts about how this year is going. Numbers on the screen, 615-737+. Beth, before the break, we were talking about how this year is different because no one was expecting to be in this place, at least this deep into it. And also, you said last year there were very clear protocols. If X happened, Y happened. That has not been the case at all this year. It seems every week the rules are changing, and a lot of that points back to the state.
Yes, it does. So last year, districts were required to submit continuous learning plans, and those plans very clearly outlined, if certain thresholds were met, at what point were districts going to implement various mitigation strategies. And there were a lot of districts who were operating under remote instruction for a period of time. And there was a general consensus at the state level that schools needed to be in person. Now, I think it's very important to recognize that no one disagrees. There's not an educator in the state of Tennessee that disagrees that students learn best with in-person instruction. There is something magical, teaching is an art, and it's hard to replicate that via a screen. And so no one disagrees that students need to be in person. We see the impact of remote instruction on their social skills, their emotional well-being. So no one disagrees. We want our students to be back in person when it is safe. And I think that there was this great expectation that it was going to be safe this year. And so there were limitations placed on districts about how they could move temporarily to remote instruction when and if infection rates reached a point where in-person instruction was not safe. The other thing that we're not seeing, at least this is what's being reported to TEA from our members across the state, is we're not seeing a commitment to the other layers of mitigation strategies. When we've got this extremely virulent virus that is just wreaking havoc across our state, we have to have all of these layers of protection, from frequent hand washing to social distancing, masking, and all of these things need to be available. Remote instruction needs to be on the table when infection rates hit a point where you can't be safe for in-person instruction. And when we talk about remote instruction, we're talking temporary remote instruction. We need to be back in schools. Educators know it. Our students know it. That's where we want to be. What is the
TEA's position on the latest, it seems like, edict from the state and the education commissioner saying, okay, we will allow for virtual options only on a school-wide or classroom basis, not a district-wide basis? Is that going to work? Is that a better strategy?
Well, the TEA has always advocated for local control. We believe that the people making the decisions about whether or not our schools need to be in person or whatever strategies they're implementing, those decisions need to be made at the local level, and not, they don't need to be hamstrung at the state level. The other thing that's really important for us to remember, Carrie, for the audience, for the community, for parents to remember, is it's not just the teachers and whether or not there are enough. Recently in East Tennessee, visiting schools, and they got that morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, the visits got canceled because they didn't have enough bus drivers. We're seeing that across the state. There's a real shortage of bus drivers and other education support professionals who are critical for keeping our schools open. And so a school by school basis is not always feasible when you think about the district-wide personnel that are essential for keeping our schools open.
That's a good point. I know in our district they're constantly asking people to come in to either volunteer to be cafeteria workers or apply for the job as well. And I know bus drivers are highly needed as well. Paula, I'd like to ask you about Metro, since a lot of our audience is is right here in Davidson County, especially at the elementary school level. As a teacher, what would you like to see happen? Because you know, as Beth said, it is so important to have those children in that classroom. What has worked and what has not over the past year and a half or so?
Well, Carrie, what I can tell you is that elementary children are a huge population of the students that we serve. And so many of them are under the age of 12 where they can't get vaccinated. And as mentioned by, yourself as well as, President Brown and Josh, educators are seeing their students and colleagues required to quarantine due to exposure. Educators are having to pick up extra duties, teach extra classes, and just pick up the slack for their colleagues who are having to quarantine because they don't have the ability to put into place the measures that President Brown just mentioned. And as she stated so beautifully, you can't keep the classroom open if you don't have teachers, you don't have your educational support professionals, school bus drivers, cafeteria workers, educational assistants, or secretaries. All of these educators keep our schools open and running effectively. And it's about everybody that keeps the system going, not just a classroom teacher. So I'm seeing that a lot of teachers are stepping up. They're trying to support each other, but it is overwhelming. It can be frustrating at times. So, but I'm seeing that, they are trying to do their best.
Yeah. Josh, I want to ask you on the high school level, after seeing high school kids who are dealing with so much change in their life and just trying to figure out life itself, just on an anecdotal level, what are you seeing in high schoolers at this age when they go back between virtual and quarantine and in school and out of school? What do you just see as a teacher?
I think a lot of this goes back to what President Brown had been saying about having a continuous learning plan. In my district, we've done our best when it came to keeping our classrooms open and making sure in-person instruction happened. But I'm also noticing, with students in my classroom, I have on any given day, 5, 6, 7 kids who are absent out of quarantine, and there's no measure in place that necessarily ensures that a student is getting that instruction at home. We do provide remote options, which is something our district does a wonderful job of as far as setting up a learning platform for students. But there's no way that we can hold those students accountable. So when they come back, it's like teaching a whole new student sometimes.
Yeah, you got to kind of loop back for that one student or those 5 students, right? On top of what you're already doing for the students who have been there.
Correct.
Yeah, I can't imagine how tough this has been and just the ongoing nature of it. Beth, have you seen a lot of teachers leave and staff leave?
I do think that when the state releases data this fall about retirement numbers and vacancies, I do anticipate that we're going to see increased numbers. At least that is the indication that I got from my last conversation with the state. I can tell you that in my travels, as I'm talking with educators over the summer and throughout the first 6 or 7 weeks of the school year, that is certainly a topic of conversation. I've had them look at me and say, yeah, I shouldn't have come back this year. And that's really heartbreaking because we know that experience matters. When we're talking about education, I mentioned earlier, it is an art, it is a craft, and you get better. I mean, I've been in education for 20 years and I am a much better teacher now than I was in my first couple of years because experience matters. And when we are already facing an educator shortage in our state, when 1 in 5 educators in our state is in the first 2 years, that has an impact on student learning. And so as we're thinking about how to support educators, how to support teaching and learning during the pandemic, we need to be really thoughtful about how we can keep our experienced workforce in the classroom because their skills are critical for student success.
Beth, I've heard you say time and time again, we are advocating for local decisions to be made and for that control to be at the local level so those leaders who know their district can make those decisions. On the flip side, that can sometimes sound like we don't want to make the hard decision ourselves. We don't want to make that hard recommendation of what needs to be done. And sometimes at the state level, you also have people saying, well, we want parents to make the decision. Everybody wants somebody else to make the decision. So I think there's some frustration around that too.
Well, let's be clear. Our governor has acknowledged that the vaccine is the best defense against the COVID-19 virus that we have. He has also acknowledged publicly and spent $12 million of our taxpayer dollars on a mask up or a face it masks work campaign. We know that these mitigation strategies work. We know that they are critical for reducing the spread of COVID-19. And when infection rates in a county, in a district, indicate that masking or temporary remote instruction or whatever the mitigation strategy is, locals have to have that authority. Now, I'm not telling you that TA is shying away from any hard conversations. We know what works, but we also believe that the people living in those communities need to have the ability that their constituents who elected them gave them to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. And as you were saying earlier, do you think that there has been a change from maybe where we were at the beginning of last school year when just about everybody started virtually and some went far longer, including Metro, than other districts? Has there been kind of a change in the continuum of what statewide people think is best as far as virtual versus not? And what is acceptable for our kids?
Well, again, I don't think that anybody disagrees that in-person instruction is best. I do think that because the pandemic has extended as long as it has, you are seeing some real fatigue from parents, from students, from educators who want to be back to life and learning, quote unquote, as normal.
Right. What's that?
Right. If you've been in the classroom, normal is relative, but there is this sense of what normal learning looks like. And I think that the very real pandemic fatigue that we're seeing is really lending itself to some of the real frustration and the angst that we're witnessing across the state.
Josh and Paula, I want to ask you this question. We have seen some very contentious, downright hateful Board of Education meetings right here in the mid-state this year that have made national news. President Biden weighing in on the one that happened in Williamson County. As a teacher, someone in the classroom, what does that do just to you as you go in the next day on your job and have to just continue on? Josh, if you want to start.
Yeah, all I can say, all I feel like is necessary saying is that as an educator who has worked in the state where we have pushed a campaign that masks work, and we've done our best to say that is the right position to take, and all that, it is disheartening to see it happen, to see those very vitriolic meetings take place. But like I said, if we are under that assumption that masks work, and we believe they do know that they do work, it's really hard to look at those type meetings and say that they were made in good faith.
Yeah, Paula, what about you? When you see the parents at these meetings, some of the leaders at these meetings, what's the tone the next day in the school?
Carrie, what I can say and what I know is that educators are committed to our students, and we want to do the best for all of them, all of our students. And we need to be ensured that our local districts have the ability to make decisions that they need to do when thinking about mitigation strategies to respond to the rise in infection rates. Districts need the ability to continue to provide instruction to our students. In fact, I know that at the state level, TA constructed a poll, and the data show that our members support mask mandates. We recognize, that there are loud groups of parents who do not want mask mandates, but we must not interpret the loudest group as being the largest group or representing the majority. Sometimes the loudest group is just able to get their voice heard. And so I just want to make sure that message is clear as well. And just to know that educators are committed to our students. It's hard, it's hurtful to watch school board members where everybody, is not on the same page, but sometimes it's not going to happen. We may have the same goals, but want to do it different ways.
Sure.
So I just want to just communicate that we as educators do want the best interest for our students.
Perfect. Okay, we have to take another quick break. We will be back right after this. Stay with us.